I don't think we can overlook the Dallas Cowboys. I think if you're the Houston Texans, you gotta learn from the tough times. And by the way, this is DeMeco Ryans, Houston Texans head coach, talking about that at his press conference yesterday.
We speak about where we are, and for me, I always speak the truth in our team meetings, right, and let the guys know exactly where we are. And yeah, we're going through a tough patch right now, but as I told our team, we need that. Like, we need to toughen up. We need to be mentally tougher. We need to figure out ways to finish games, and the only way to learn sometimes is through failure, right? And that strengthens you. That grows that stamina that you need, and it creates that resolve that you need to see, like, man, where I need to pick it up. Like, it's not all the way there, because if it was, we would have finished those games. So it teaches you, like, where you're lacking, and it shows, like, where we have to pick it up and finish. So I'm thankful for this moment, and I'm thankful for our guys to learn from this moment. I always talk about whether it's win or loss, it's always a learning moment. It's always a teachable moment, and I feel like our guys have learned a lot. And now it's time for us to exhibit the growth that we've shown and what we've learned throughout these tough times.
I disagree. He's talking about learning a lot. We have yet to see the learning. It's not in action. I mean, they might be taking it in, but they're not able to execute said learning. Learn to finish games. You've had plenty of chances to learn to finish games, and this is where my DeMeco Ryans criticism is coming from right now. I know everyone wants to blame Bobby Slogan on the offensive line. You can blame C.J. Stroud for Sunday night. But I don't think DeMeco Ryans is immune from any of this, because how are they learning? He's talking about how they're learning here. Where's the learning? Where is the learning?
Especially when, like, this team, like, a lot of their wins over the last 2 years, I think they've been great at the end of games. I mean, C.J. Stroud is...
Last year they were awesome at the end of games.
Yeah, and they've got the Buffalo game this year where
that wasn't awesome at the end. I mean, they were up 20-3 in that game.
No, well, see, it's almost... Yeah, I guess it's almost like two parts of the ending, right? Where it's like how you let the team crawl back in versus what happens on the final drive, like we saw in that Buffalo game. But yeah, they like having a big lead and not squandering it is something that I think is a huge concern for the Texans right now. Between the Buffalo game and the Lions game, like, you're up by a good amount of points in both, 17 and 19 points in those games, and you let the other team crawl back in. Like that has to change, and that has to be. And I think that's for DeMeco. Like, he needs to learn. Like maybe he's being too passive in those moments. Maybe he's not being aggressive enough.
It could be that. I don't think they're learning from these experiences, and there's still time for them to learn. But good God, I mean, if it took you this long to learn in school, you would be taking the class again.
You'd be Tim Riggins. You'd be in college, high school for 8
years.
But
at least with Tim Riggins, you look the other way because he's so good at football. You're fine with him showing up to practice drunk or skipping out on practices because you know what he brings to the table. No, we're talking about, I mean, you're going to take this class again. And is it because you didn't show up for class and you weren't listening to DeMeco? Last night I was on the locker room with Landry Locker on YouTube, and after I left, Landry, I thought, said something pretty telling. You know, we hear about this swarm, special work ethic, and relentless mindset all the time. Laramie Tunsil's a captain. Does he embody that?
Nope.
Does Titus Howard take from Laramie Tunsil an awful lot, talking about, like, oh, why isn't my guy first team All-Pro? Like, the offensive line doesn't really take to this. And I heard him say that, and I was like, bingo, you nailed it on the head. And these are the guys that need to learn from it. And okay, fine, maybe Kenyon Green was a lost cause here, but there is a general sense of apathy that I get from the offensive line, who is highly paid and have been an effing embarrassment this year. They have. You're paid $188 million in total salary between the 5 starters, and he's still one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the game? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think there's just the lack of accountability. It shows. Like, but you're right. Like, that's a great point by Landry. Like, they're not
learning. They're not learning through failure either.
Yes.
If they're failing, you're supposed to learn from the failure. No, they're just getting up and saying, yeah, whatever. That is the sense that I get. And look, this is a minor thing, but I mean, they don't even really want to face us asking them questions after they lose. They basically make it very difficult to do so. And I get it. The locker room thing, it's weird for reporters to be in there. You call me a meat gazer or whatever, like Torrey Smith was saying about some of the guys that are in there. All I'm saying is we want to ask these guys questions, and the way that they kind of hide from it makes me feel like they don't believe that they should be questioned. That might not actually be what they're thinking, but that's sort of what it tells everybody. These guys have stunk, and yet they never really go on record to talk about it. They seemingly take their sweet time getting presentable, in quotation marks, so that anything they say is only going to be to the few reporters that they actually talk to, who seem to be rather friendly with them.
Yeah, who don't really ask hard questions. I mean, this goes back to the beginning of the season when the Texans were winning games and the offensive line was struggling, and you could tell that they were frustrated with why they were being questioned. I mean, it was
ridiculous.
That's part. They didn't like even being asked how in a victory, your quarterback's getting hit a ton too much, and it was clearly an early sign of a huge problem for the Texans that will last throughout this season, and they didn't want to answer those questions. So it's not a surprise. And I do think that I know we're not the end all be all. I know the media is not. But I think you can tell a lot about a football player or an athlete when they hide from the media because they don't want to answer questions. Whether it's a guy, if a guy was demanded
it's not on me.
If a guy demanded a trade and then was hiding from the media, we would crucify him. If a player is not playing well and then is not wanting to talk to the media.
Verbally, not physically.
Yes. I think it shows kind of that they don't want to answer for their failures. And now maybe that's because they really don't. And I think they've also made this clear, specifically Titus and Laramie, that when they answer questions, they deflect a lot. They talk about winning your one-on-one matchups, and it feels like they're deflecting to the interior, offensive line and saying, well, it's not my guys that are getting home to CJ. It's the guys between us, Laramie and Titus that are causing these problems.
Mm-hmm. Here's a text from, I believe this is from the 409. I think it's strange that y'all and fans are acting like the season is over. Pause for a second. No one's acting like the season is over. There's plenty of time left, but this texter continues. Long way to go and playoff bound. Well, assuming that they take care of business, they will be a better team by the end of the season than they are now. I want to believe that, but to what D'Amico Ryans is saying about the learning is not happening. It is not being seen in action. They have not figured out how to close a game, and they have had so many reps of failure. I mean, we're getting closer to the point of walking away than we are of progress at this point in time.
Yeah, I want to believe that too, but I would ask this texter, give me an example of what makes you actually believe that besides, hopeful fandom. What actually are we seeing that makes you think that is it just Nico Collins' return? That everything is just gets fixed?
That's the hope right now.
But the thing is they still didn't score in the second half of games with Nico Collins.
Right, the Bills game specifically. Now, again, he was out of the Bills game in the second half, but you're right. They struggled the first 4 games of the year.
He doesn't fix all your problems, and it'll definitely make them better. But when your next 3 opponents, they should go 3-0, and they should win easily in all of them. I mean, they'll probably be 5.5-point favorites at a bare minimum in each of the next 3 games. And you're going to get better at the season end when you play the Chiefs and the Ravens?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares if you beat the Dolphins and the Titans in week 18? You have to perform well against good teams, and you've only beaten Buffalo. You've played 4 playoff teams this year, right? And you've lost 3 of those games to the NFC North. I mean,
on the NFC, I guess.
Yeah, I would love to believe that it's going to get better, but there's and the season's not over. How are they going to fix the offensive line? Well, they passed on the trade deadline. We know it's hard. We know it doesn't happen, but they weren't able to make a move, and they brought in a bunch of guys who are nobodies. And the only reason why I know Zach Thomas's name is because Paul's funny. They didn't bring anyone in to they can't bring anyone to help fix it. So how are they going to fix it? How are they actually going to be better? There's no tangible proof that it's going to get better this season.
Good question. I don't know. But
I got one for you, Paul. One thing, they want to talk about learning.
Yeah.
We saw at the end of the Lions game, whoever came in for Lassiter, I don't even know his name, was not good and was giving up easy chunk plays.
Kadar Holman, I think.
Yeah, you want to prove to me you've learned something, D'Amico? Derek Stingley Jr. follows CeeDee Lamb for every single snap this game. Because as soon as CeeDee Lamb is on Holman or Okuda, Cooper Rush is going to have the chance to torch you.
I think you should put a Ziz Al-Shire on him, like they did on Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That was crazy.
Listen, sometimes you got to live dangerously, And
that was real dangerous.
Didn't work out so well. It's like those Florida men who play with gators and end up with their arm gone.